Welcome, everyone, to SolidWorks Live, where today you will learn what it takes to succeed within the SolidWorks for Startups program. First, by hearing directly from the director of the program itself on how to get into the program and what the program offers, both in terms of SolidWorks licensing and well beyond it. And then we will take you on site with us for 15-minute visits with two innovative companies in the spaces of additive manufacturing and advanced materials, both located in Houston, Texas, which, as you might remember, is the home of 3D Experience World 2025, where thousands of us will assemble to teach, learn, and explore all things SolidWorks and much, much more. So when you consider that all that's going to happen in the next 40 to 45 minutes, that really sounds like a lot, right? So without further ado, let's get started. Let's get started with our first guest, the director of the SolidWorks for Startups program and the 3D Experience Labs program here in North America, Abhishek Bali. Abhishek, how's it going?
Hey Sean, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. So you've been on SolidWorks Live. You know we like to speak candidly and genuinely here whenever we're on the show, right? So let's get to the first question, which
Mhm.
is the SolidWorks for Startups program a way for qualifying companies to get SolidWorks for free?
Mhm.
And as a second part of that, is that all it is? In other words, what else, if anything, is the program really all about?
Perfect. I think that's a great question because I get that question a lot and I have a good answer for that. That's why it's a good question. But the thing is that, see, the spirit of the program when it started in 2016, 2017 by Greg Smith and Suchit, who's the SolidWorks Vice President of Strategy and Business Development. So the whole idea was give first. So uh, we realized early on that software is a big cost when it comes to hardware startup founders actually trying to work on an idea that can potentially change the world, right? um, Talented bunch of people, forming a team, working on a tough problem, and usually a lot of startups have actually told me personally is they say that in those early days all we had was a great idea of some pizza and a SolidWorks model. So early on, we realized that if we take that cost out, that'll be a huge help to the startups who are working on hardware product. So the SolidWorks for Startups program basically gives hardware startups an access to SolidWorks, and not just SolidWorks, but 3D Experience SolidWorks and 8 other apps, including simulation, project planning, and so on, free for first year, at 70% off for second year, and at 50% off for third year. Now, having said that, you know, over the years, the program has really evolved to a point where last month we received over 900 applications from across the world. And I'm sure this year we'll hit the 10,000 applications mark. So yeah, it's been a great journey so far, and we've met amazing startups doing amazing things. Yeah.
Yeah, and once again, like you mentioned, no small part due to people like yourself, Suchit, Greg, Jillian, of course. And before we get into Abby, our 15-minute customer visits,
Yeah.
which we have planned for you guys with 3D and Mars Materials, I should say, both members of the SolidWorks for Startups program. I wanted to ask you about the second half of the title that I announced you with today, namely the 3D Experience Labs portion of it. So picture Abby, you're a viewer, right? And you're a designer, you're an engineer, you're an entrepreneur watching this today. What do you want me, the viewer, to know about the 3D Experience Labs program and the role that it plays within our overall ecosystem?
Right. So there are two programs, the 3D Experience Lab and the SolidWorks for Startups program.
Mm,
Where on one side, in the SolidWorks for Startups program, we get over 900 applications per month. Here, in the lab program, although we get hundreds of applications, but we are looking for only 10 to 12 companies per year to get into the 3D Experience Lab program.
wow.
It's a high decibel program because it's the corporate accelerator of the source system. So these 10 companies are actually picked by the senior management, including Bernard Charles, the ex-CEO and vice chairman of Dassault Systems, and they get four things. If you are a startup in the 3D Experience Lab, You get free access for 2 years to Katia, SolidWorks, Simulia, whatever is on the 3D Experience platform. Also, you get access to mentoring, because we realized, many years ago when we started the 3D Experience Lab, that these are high fidelity software. You cannot work on your idea looking at YouTube videos. So we connect you to mentors within our ecosystem, our DS employees, for 2 years, again free. If you're co-located in Paris, Boston, Munich, or Pune, where the physical labs are located, then you can actually kind of set up your shop in our offices, and you can use the fab labs there. And fourth is that we give you the opportunity to we take you to CES, Viva Tech, all these big events, and you get a chance for those 2 years to get aligned to the robust marketing engine of the source system. So that's the 3D Experience Lab for you, and I manage the North American part of it.
That's incredible. I've had the opportunity at 3D Experience Worlds and otherwise to meet several members of the 3D Experience Lab program. I should say companies that are part of the program. And I mentioned to you before the episode started today that it kind of makes me want to incorporate and try to join the 3D Experience Lab program myself if I could, because the exposure, not only the access to technology, personnel, but also the exposure that it grants, the co-exposure, right, at that really fragile and exciting time in your company's history is paramount. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and one last thing is, I think I forgot to mention, the 3
Sure.
Experience Lab is about impact. So we are looking for companies trying to solve a tough technical problem for a better, sustainable tomorrow. So that's the key difference between the SolidWorks for Startups program, where a good-looking e-cigarette is welcome, but here you should be working on something that's around the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So that's the main difference when it comes to a startup looking for both the programs.
Awesome. Very helpful delineation. Well, I should say I will see you next week.
Oh, yeah.
SolidWorks, everyone is on the road for the innovation tour. Google it if you haven't heard of it. So I'll be seeing you next week in Boston. I can't wait, Abby. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me.
Sure. All right, everyone. So as we said during the intro to this episode, we're taking you on a tour of innovation digitally today, which is fitting because we are exploring, of course, the startups who leverage SolidWorks as a means of breaking through in some of the hottest industries today. So our first and second stops, our 15-minute stops that we have for you here on SolidWorks Live, they occur in Houston, Texas, which if you heard at the very beginning of the episode, that is no coincidence because thousands of us are going to be headed there ourselves in February of 2025 for 3D Experience World 2025. So with our first visit here, let's firstly learn how human-sized 3D printers, that phrase, and the word affordable can actually go together with the amazing minds at Re3D. Hey everyone, my name is Sean O'Neill. We are on SolidWorks Live. I'm live with Samantha Snabes. Did I get that right?
Yep, you got it.
Great to see you.
Such a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, so you guys will be able to tell, I'm sure, through the B-roll we'll be playing over these clips. You have an amazing space here. There is no shortage. I'm like visualizing in terms of data. Like, is it terabytes of original information in here? Is it, yeah, probably, I don't even know, but there's just so much to look at, so much to absorb, so many stories. You guys have an amazing space here.
Thank you. We've crammed a lot of memories and fingerprints in 10,000 square feet.
Yeah. So let's just start like right on the ground floor. What is Re3D? Like, what's your story? How, who are you?
Yeah. So Re3D is just it's different to everyone now, right? So we're going into our 11th year. Thank you. It's been quite a journey as a bootstrapped social enterprise that's open source. So we're quite the odd ducks in our industry. Plus, we manufacture with dirty fingernails right where we're sitting today in Houston, Texas, which at the time it was pretty unique. So we were a spinoff of Engineers Without Borders, NASA Johnson Space Center, and some of our peers' time volunteering with Opportunity International and that organization and working at NASA. And we had this vision to enable some of the friends we were making globally in Rwanda and Nicaragua to have more access to their own resources to solve their own problems instead of being so dependent or frustrated with like foreign aid and, big brands and government, like inherently. And we see this in ESSA too. People are explorers and are really creative and want to solve their own problems and support their families. And they're so brilliant. So we had this vision. The open source movement was getting started to share 3D printers. And what we heard is that the people we met wanted to make big things. They didn't want to make just something you held in your hand. They wanted to make something that's functional, a birthing stool, a lower limb prosthetic, a tool. And big affordable printers weren't really available at the time. So we started like this open source project and effort, and we're blogging about it. And lo and behold, the government of Chile gave us $40,000 through Startup Chile to try and make a 3D printer. We were intending to make a company around it. And when I arrived in Santiago, I was our first employee with this idea that had been in our heads. I heard they had a booth at South by Southwest. And it was kind of the perfect storm because my co-founders were in Texas and they agreed to give us free passes if we made our product in 8 weeks. And I had to scheme around it to launch it simultaneously on Kickstarter because everyone was doing it in 3D printing. And it was funded in 27 hours. And not a single person in Migonero, Rwanda backed a printer. But Kickstarter was calling us saying, we've got big brands calling us and their purchasing departments asking how they make an account so they can, a Kickstarter account so they can buy your product. And it wasn't even real yet. So we kind of just bootstrapped the company. And so, and along the way, we had grants and an opportunity to work on 3D printing from plastic waste. And that's a whole other dimension of Re3D. So what is Re3D? Re3D is a lot of experiences that humans, our micro investors, our Kickstarter backers, our customers now, our team, and the communities we work in as a social enterprise kind of define for themselves. But for us, we think it's about opportunity and about community and collaboration and being creative.
You mentioned it, affordable. One of the things I found so, I don't know, unusual in a way, when I came across Re3D for the first time was this idea of affordable and human-sized 3D printers. It's not something that I ever thought when I first saw, the first sort of big box 3D printer that I'd ever hear of in my life. How do you guys manage to do that?
Yeah, so for us, we were thinking about the smaller desktop open source printers initially, but the communities that we were interested in engaging with, and even in Detroit, where I come from, and communities around the U.S., there was this trend and demand and appetite for things that were functional. Like iPhone cases are functional, but they can only go so far. Or a bobblehead is cool, but people that are problem solving often need something bigger or a lot of a little thing. Mm-hmm. So that's what drove us to focus on our initial offering, which is called Gigabot, and we benchmarked it off of the dimensions of a composting toilet, and that I was a big fan of in Rwanda, and decided we were going to make a toilet-sized 3D printer because it was a great illustration too of like something that's functional.
That's really a testament to you can find inspiration anywhere. Yeah.
So we start at 2 foot cube, with the exception of one project. We only start with that size, and then we go bigger. And our customers again are kind of our micro investors because we don't have investment. So our customers have the opportunity, because we manufacture in the U.S. and we do custom solutions, to contract us to make bigger printers. And we've had several customers over the years that are okay if we release that design once it's done. So that's how we got to the XLT. We have the Terabot, and we had a customer in the Air Force that commissioned us to make an Exabot, which is taller than us. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't even know. Whenever we do these interviews, we always sort of exchange a list of topics or questions that we mutually want to get into and dive deeper into. And I'm not even sure if I had this on the list, but one of the things that I found most remarkable about you guys as a business is that, and I think you just mentioned it, you've been able to do this without outside investment?
Yeah, it's been, admittedly, it hasn't been easy. And, people in our industry and 3D printing we're considered a broad-based technology, kind of struggle sometimes with, whether or not you should take investment. But for us, again, we didn't start V3D wanting to start a company. It happened as an artifact of getting this grant from an accelerator, and then also getting funded accidentally in one day on Kickstarter by a community that we didn't expect to buy it. And then people had just provided pre-orders. So we've been really blessed in that there's been kind of this community willing to take a risk on us and understanding we might deliver late, and we did on Kickstarter, but still really believing that we could bring this product to life. In parallel, I'd be remiss not to acknowledge we have shamelessly pitched all over the world for free money, and including some of your coworkers at Dassault in a competition in Tennessee, and that's how we got to know Dassault. And we've heavily leveraged the Small Business Innovation Research Program. So because we deliver product, and the reason a lot of manufacturers have to fundraise that have new technologies like ours is you're always versioning, right, your product, and then you've got to figure out how to manage that. And that takes additional capital. And we've just been really fortunate because there's so many applications for 3D printing, like we were talking about earlier, to be able to get funding through federal grants and non-federal grants to support the research and development while we were selling the printers. So it's just been a long journey. We have to be really lean though. Like you'll notice in the kitchen, our shelving is really doors we cut in half and mount into the wall to make, the tables that we eat on. So we get pretty creative along the way.
Your company is very much, at least, in terms of my impression, it seems like you really are at your core makers. When you talked with me initially about hardware, your passion for hardware, but also specific passions within hardware. Like you talked about, I think you've mentioned passion for bootstrapping, open source hardware, as well as socially responsible hardware. Can you talk to us a little bit about the open source portion of who you guys are?
Yeah, so initially when we launched Re3D, prior to Re3D, we were kind of like a club that met up at NASA, and we were really just thinking about like open source applications with 3D printing and projects so that our friends overseas could use their own resources and, make it their own. And then we kind of accidentally started this business around it. So we've tried really hard to maintain that. Admittedly, the open source spectrum is really wide and always really defined, as you know, and so some might say we're not open source enough, but we try to do our best. We are right now. Someone's going to be watching this and judging us if they're familiar with Re3D, because we don't have all the drawings and everything released on our newest offering. And quite frankly, that was because we were trying to manage supply coming out of COVID, and we just haven't had time to sit down and to do it all, right? But we do our best. We're trying to share quarterly updates on where we are. We have monthly meetups with the pellet printing community, globally, the FGF community, and we keep a GitHub for our codes. So if anyone's interested in Clipper and that trend, Mitchell has done a great job updating that library. But, again, we could always do better, but it's part of our ethos. Like we're not, we don't use the word competitor at Re3D. We see everyone as a peer in the community, and we love working together and seeing people grow and share and learn from each other. And then in terms of being socially responsible, that kind of feeds into, because the more we enable people to problem solve on site, either with our product or with something similar to it, it does reduce supply chain too, and some of those, logistical long tails that can be really hard on the environment.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, I wanted to ask this question. You touched on it a little bit, I think in a kind of a previous response, but of course, when we look at your website, anyone hears of Re3D, we think about your printers. They're really awesome. They're huge. They're very impressive. But what your printers make, or what they used to make, is actually, I think, a huge part of your story as well. Materials. Not only the materials that you use, but where they come from, where you source them from. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So since the beginning of the vision we were pitching, kind of as a club at Johnson Space Center, was these toilet-sized 3D printers that could be powered by garbage. And what we thought a lot about at the time was recycled filament. So our first printer, the Gigabyte, is a polymer printer, Cartesian printer, and it uses the rope-like material people call filament. And so we were just thinking, like, it'd be cool to make that from trash. Well, a lot of peers in our community have enabled that, which is really great. And we realized we couldn't do everything all at once. So we focused on the large format, affordable part of it, while that recycled filament industry was getting developed. Over time, the feedback we got from our customers, again, we're very community centric, was that sometimes that filament was hard to procure. And then a lot of times too, it might have like a plastic spool in the middle that had to be disposed of. And so people started realizing, including ourselves, that sometimes the way filament is manufactured actually has, it involves first reducing the size of the waste stream it's made from and processing it, maybe providing some other chemicals, maybe not. And then sometimes it's pelletized and then it's turned into this. And so we started to think about, what if we just used recycled pellets, or what if we just took the waste directly and made it smaller and did whatever we had to do to it, whether it was drying or whatnot, and we put it directly into the printer. So we shared that idea a couple times because I screwed up my time zones once. I missed a deadline and then also got rejected, as some people do. I heard about the Small Business Innovation Research Program through National Science Foundation, and they were really great and coached us and gave us feedback, and we got an award from them and then won some pitch competitions globally that gave us the money then to modify, about 5 years in, the business head of our printer. So instead of printing from the spools filament, instead what we have is a gantry system, bellows gantry system, where we have a hopper. It's like a big bucket that sits on the top, and so you can put that waste in and then it's gravity fed.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and now we're working on other ways, maybe automating and using other equipment, 2 different versions of this, but kind of settled in early with what we call flake, loosely fused granular fabrication, or pellet printing is still kind of new, especially for the open source community and large format community, but we've had an opportunity to kind of play with that in different ways, and we're still trying to figure out what works and what doesn't and where the technology goes from here, but it's been a really interesting process that's often funded by research grants at this stage.
It's been awesome to hear a lot about your backstory through today, and of course your values and your mission as a company. But SolidWorks for startups, like SolidWorks for startups. You showed me a trophy among all the cool things here. The trophy stuck out for obvious reasons. You mentioned you have shown up at different events and made relationships that way. But can you tell us the backstory of the trophy that you showed me just a moment ago?
And one thing I've learned too, pitching, is it's an opportunity not only to try and win money and resources, it's also an opportunity in some of these events to get to know the judges or the sponsors leading into it. So I was thrilled to find out that this organization called Startup of the Year takes 100 startups to compete against each other in a series of events over a day, had a representative from Dassault that was there to build partnerships with small businesses. So I decided, we used credit card points, I was going to go on a pitch. One of the prizes was investment, which we wouldn't take. So thinking that I would be ineligible for winning, I literally went just to meet Jillian Friat from Dassault. And I emailed the organizers and said, hey, I'm competing at Startup of the Year. I hear there's matchmaking. Can you ensure that I matchmake with Jillian? She is the one person I want to meet. And I had already booked a ticket on credit card points based on availability to fly back without even being available for the finals. Because I thought there's no way we're going to make like the top 5 or 10. So, I met Jillian. She was amazing and heard about the startup program. And it was fabulous. And it gave us a way to like legally use the licenses and to grow, not to mention to learn about the Innovation Center, which ended up procuring a gigawatt, and all the other companies that are part of it that are facing the same challenges we are. So it was just a fabulous opportunity to connect with them, to learn about the 3D Experience events, which I never heard about, and just to learn also more about the offering. They helped connect us with MLC CAD, our reseller, and I was just really valued that opportunity. Little did I know we ended up winning the event, which please, Jillian. It's just a great story end to end.
You guys are exhausting in the best possible ways. You are doing so many things. You're making so many connections and scaling at a pace that I imagine. But once again, thank you so much for just having us out.
Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for watching. Please reach out to us. We're here for you. we have teammates full time. Their job is to make sure we're building those relationships and connecting. So yeah, we'd love to hear your story.
Thank you once again to Samantha Snabes. Got it right again, I hope. Let me know, Samantha, in the chat if you're here. But I believe I did get it right. And the entire team, of course, at Re3D, you guys are fantastic people. And our viewers, you guys, you can check out what they're up to, including their entire line of 3D printers, their materials, as well as open opportunities, if you're interested, over at re3d.org. That is re3d with no colon in the middle, re3d.org. All right, next, we move from additive manufacturing to a different type of material creation process. So CO2 capture, it's long been a topic, a big topic really of interest for years now. And the commercial opportunities that actually stem from this stand to be extremely lucrative, as we found out. So consider material like carbon fiber. It's a material that shows up in so many of our devices, think phone cases and so many more, just everyday objects. And our next SolidWorks for Startups program member, Mars Materials, plays a mighty role in the overall CO2 sequester to advanced material creation process. So you might be wondering, how is that? Well, let's find out how by visiting the HQ of Mars Materials live from Houston, Texas, right now.
We're live here on SolidWorks Live. We are here with Mars Materials out here in Houston. We have Kristian and Aaron. Kristian, how's it going, man?
It's going great.
Yeah, great to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, yeah. We're so happy to be out here in Houston. Of course, the home city for 3D Experience World 2025 coming up in February. But yeah, we're out here seeing some customers, and we're really excited to come out and see you guys. So first of all, just the level set, what is Mars Materials? What are you guys all about?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, and welcome to our lab. So we are Mars Materials. We are a venture and breakthrough energy fellows-backed startup. We're working to turn everyday products into carbon sinks. So what we do is we commercialize process technology, which you can see behind us, called nitrylation, which was developed by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL, that enables us to make this chemical monomer called acrylonitrile. Now, you can say that 10 times fast, but you can also call it
Can I try once?
Yeah.
Acrylonitrile.
Yeah, acrylonitrile. There you go. Yeah, you got it.
I learned something today. All right, success.
You could also call it AN for short.
Okay, I'll do that.
AN is used in a variety of products that we all know and love, from filaments for 3D printing. Okay. This also uses a co-monomer and polymer for carpets, keyboard keys, vacuum parts, car dashboards. It's used as a key ingredient for flocculants for water treatment chemicals and paper pulp manufacturing. And then finally, it's used as a sole raw material for carbon fiber. The carbon fiber that we all know and love, that's used for defense and aerospace and filament as well, and other applications that we see to have decarbonization potential.
But also there's a lot of fun applications with carbon fiber, like pickleball paddles, which has been blowing up like crazy lately. I know in Houston, there's pickleplexes all across the city now, and many of those paddles are made with carbon fiber.
It's interesting. I was talking with a friend who told me that he plays tennis twice a day, and he was saying that pickleball is very different from tennis. He's saying that tennis there's a lot of like stopping and cutting. With pickleball, less so. Like it can be more of a stationary sport. Because I was thinking, like, why didn't tennis take off the same way the pickleball did? And he was explaining that. So it's interesting. But yeah, you guys, in terms of the output, the sort of inevitable product of what you guys are after creating, you're all over the place. It's almost like explaining what the SolidWorks do, right? In a way. When people ask me at parties, like you were just saying, like talking to people at parties, whenever you ask what is SolidWorks used for, it's used in the creation of machines like this and all sorts of different products, including yours, right? So it's interesting to see this sort of ubiquity, and I think all that we do. And you guys, I should say, the two of you have very different roles here, right? So why don't we talk about what you guys do individually? So Aaron, what do you here at Mars Materials?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO and co-founder. So I oversee our capitalization strategy and execution. So raising money, making sure we're spending it wisely, and then making sure we're able to get more of it in the door across various sources of capital, be it non-dilutive monies like grants, equity dollars, so investors and strategic partnerships, and then debt financing to actually help build the facilities that will operate and produce our acrylonitrile or AN. I also oversee kind of team building and operation infrastructure, and then some of the facility aspects, siting and all the pre-construction activities that are involved in getting and bringing our technology to the market. And then I guess commercialization. So big role.
How about you, Kristian?
Yeah, as a co-founder, wear many different hats, but specifically at as my role as Chief Technology Officer, I'm overseeing our engineering and technology roadmap. So today that looks like scaling up this process technology behind us. It's the most challenging technology to scale up in the series of technologies that we're looking at. Essentially, we're aiming to build a value chain for the carbon dioxide utilization market. And so CO2 is being captured and it can be stored underground, but also converted into a lot of different products like our acrylonitrile, and we're developing the technology behind us to enable that value chain. And so as Chief Technology Officer, ensuring that technology is being scaled up, but also building out and looking backwards to ensure that as we scale this technology up, we have access to the technologies upstream to ensure that we can integrate all of these technologies together to ensure we can store CO2 into our end product. And so that's primary aim as the Chief Technology Officer, but also as co-founder involved in a lot of different aspects of the business, from doing some of the assisting Aaron on the fundraising side of things, working to create budgets and ensure that we're spending our money wisely, as Aaron mentioned, and also involved in the hiring process as well.
So you guys, I'm careful to say, you guys are not doing the actual carbon capture. And this is one thing, even in speaking with you, Kristian, when I first got here, when we were off camera, that I wanted to get more of an idea, and I didn't want to spoil too much of it, because, right, it's like if you have a conversation off camera, you get all the details. All the questions are kind of fake at that point. So I wanted to ask you guys, can you take us through, and for our viewers as well, because, we all like to know how things work. So where are you guys in that process? So we understand that carbon is captured. So who is doing that? And then how are you then sort of taking that sequestered carbon and fitting yourself into this equation that eventually results in these materials like carbon fiber? Can you take us through that, like step by step?
Yeah. So CO2 captured today can be from a point source, which is generally higher concentration, and from industrial plants like ethanol and ammonia and steel. And then there's also direct air capture, where you're removing the CO2 directly from the atmosphere, much lower concentration. However, that CO2 would otherwise be in the atmosphere if it wasn't for this direct air capture technology. And so,
who's typically doing that? Who's doing the carbon capture?
The specific companies or the technologies?
I think, like myself, I could definitely be more educated on that.
Absolutely, yeah. Happy to talk about that. So when I first got into the space, there was 3 major players that I was aware of: Carbon Engineering, Climeworks, and Global Thermostat.
And that's the direct air capture
That's
side.
direct air capture companies. And since then, this space has ballooned because of the investment, as well as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They mandated that we need negative emissions technologies like direct air capture to remove CO2 from the atmosphere and reach our net zero goals. And since that directive, there has been hundreds of companies that have popped up globally that are working at a breakneck pace to remove CO2 directly from the atmosphere. So I can't name all of the major players. I will say that one of them recently got acquired for over $1 billion by Oxy, and they have a pilot plant called Orca, or a demonstration plant, that is working to store hundreds of thousands of tons underground directly from the atmosphere. And that was Carbon Engineering, formerly Carbon Engineering. So these projects are getting acquired for greater than $1 billion, and this industry is really taking off. On the point source side of things, this technology is much more mature. It's been around for 15 to 20 years. And like I said, it's a higher concentrated source of CO2. So that CO2 is being directly captured before it ever enters the atmosphere, compressed, purified, and then used, either stored underground, used for in applications like the beverage industry, or it could be repurposed and used in processes like ours downstream, where we use commercial grade CO2, and through a series of process steps, produce our intermediate, which we're using today to feed into our reactor unit.
And one of the major players on that point source side is Shell. So we have cited our pilot facility here at Shell's Technology Center in Houston. and they are a provider of captured CO2, and they're looking to be one of the global leaders in that space.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. There's another aspect that I wanted to touch on in terms of what makes you guys you, specifically, and that's your people. And you might be wondering, Sean, you have this iPad in your hand, you aren't even looking at it. What's the iPad for? And specifically, it's for an area on your jobs page when you talk about the types of people, the types of prospective team members that you guys want to attract. And you put it so eloquently and so richly that I wanted to read it here for you guys so that we can sort of further analyze it. But on your jobs page, you say, we're a small team with absolute respect for each other and our differences. We recruit Planeteers committed to helping us center our values and further promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. So at Dassault System, the parent company of SOLIDWORKS, we have a diversity, inclusion, and belonging group. But part of that is, of course, trying to make it so that the sort of mission or the ethos of who you are weaves into the everyday of how you operate. So how do you guys manage to do that when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the sort of scope of your co-working, your hiring, and your business operations?
Yeah, there's a several-pronged approach. From my perspective, the team is everything. We're doing extremely hard work, first-of-a-kind technology, and really trying to prove out something that only has incentive because of the climate crisis. And that takes a lot of passion and commitment from folks who could be otherwise spending a lot of time working in other industries, making a lot more money, and doing a bit more kind of known quantities of activities. So we really focus on the team building aspect of it. And for me, we welcome all. And what I mean by that is the new hungry college grad to the single mom to the grandparents. And either between our W-2s or our 1099s or advisors who give us 10 hours a week or so, we have all of those groups represented. And from a chemical processing perspective, it's a lot of science, but it's also art. So you need generational knowledge to really share, don't file it this way. If you put it this way, it's going to actually work better. And here's the performance parameters. So being able to bring all of that insight in really helps to unblock us. And for me, I think it's a pretty key way that makes us successful. And the way we kind of bridge that divide between the diversity across like thoughts and backgrounds is really coming up with a consensus-led operational structure that really requires us to make sure everyone's on the same page. I think and Kristian has his own thoughts too.
Yeah. So as CTO, I'm very close to the lab and working with our team of engineers. I mentioned prior to the recording that we handle some challenge chemicals. And as you're handling these materials, you need to have a heightened awareness of what each of your team members is doing, what everyone's working on, what activities you're completing, what equipment is needed, et cetera. And so we've provided all of our Planeteers, as we call them, the tools necessary to problem solve in real time in a safe manner that makes everyone feel confident and comfortable about the work that's taking place. And if anyone has what we call pinch or a feeling of discomfort with what the activities that they're going, they have stop work authority to discuss, align, and figure out a solution to move forward. And I feel that's what brings us all together, is that we have a very heightened sense of trust because we take each other's concerns very seriously. And we are constantly driving to address those concerns and figure out solutions to move forward.
Part of the way that we built our relationship is through the SolidWorks for Startups program. And when I asked Jillian about, different companies that were doing cool things in the Houston area, she of course mentioned you guys here at Mars Materials. So could you talk us a little bit through how you got engaged with the SolidWorks for Startups program?
Yeah. So I'm an expert in carbon removal, and I became an expert after a fellowship with a group called Carbon 180, which is a DC-based think tank focused on creating the carbon economy. There, I was charged with identifying technologies and business models that could help us turn Mars into a company that could abate 1 billion tons of CO2. Our original kind of idea was not working on acrylonitrile at all. It was taking my expertise from methane and trying to figure out solutions to capture it and convert it, mostly from biogas. So if you're familiar with the biogas kind of composition, it's about 50% methane, 49% CO2, and then some other kind of impurities. We were using the SolidWorks program to help kind of design our demo plant at that scale for that technology. Unfortunately, we had to make a big pivot, as companies do in their lifetime, and the software one was like one of the kind of tools that helped us decide on that pivot, in addition to doing additional kind of customer discovery.
Yeah, I understand. So you guys are now looking into the future, and I was talking with you about this a bit before, Kristian. Looking into the future now, you guys, how are you guys looking to possibly use SolidWorks now?
Yeah, I think there's many different opportunities in which we can leverage SolidWorks in the future. One of the immediate applications that comes to mind is we're going to be needing to do 3D models of our future plants. Mm-hmm. This is a shipping container size. Our next plant will be 10,000 square feet. And so thinking about how we map out that area, how each 3D component behaves, how the fluid is flowing through there, how the heat is being transferred in the system is something that we need to know before we turn on. And so that's before we flip the on switch. So that's probably one of the most immediate applications that I can think of for SolidWorks is the design and modeling of our future plants.
Yeah, as we were talking before, some of the simulation possibilities, I think you guys will have a lot of fun with the tools and hopefully learn a lot. And again, keep cutting down the time that it takes you guys to build what you need to build and lay out what you need to lay out. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna be here again in February for 3D Experience World 2025. I hope to see you guys there. It'll be right around the corner, basically. But yeah, thank you, Kristian. Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you,
so
Sean.
much. You guys are doing incredible work. And thank you so much for being on SolidWorks Live.
Thanks for having us, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Once again, a big thank you to the teams at Re3D and Mars Materials. Big thank you to our production team as well here at SolidWorks and our audience. Thank you all for watching. So if you're interested and you're a startup, you're interested in all the benefits that we explored with Abhishek and others during this episode, you can head on out here. We have a QR code and the link, solidworks.com/startups. So you're going to find right there, just like you saw in the little slow scroll of the website, find all the information you need to get started. And remember, give us a like if you got something of value, anything of value out of this episode. I hope you did. We heard some really impressive customers and companies today in Re3D and Mars Materials, and some insights from Abhishek as well, right, on how to apply for the startups program. And be sure, if you're on YouTube, especially, be sure to subscribe if you want to get more industry catch-ups like what we saw today, and SolidWorks info, SolidWorks tips and tricks firsthand from our various teams here. So we hope to see you next month for another episode of SolidWorks Live. Take care.